In this lesson, we are going to be walking through when to use VLANs in your network install, as well as how to configure VLANs on the SX switch user interface. Now, our SX series switch models are the following. There's the SX24P, the SX24P16, and the SX24P8. This lesson will apply for all these particular models that have been updated to the latest firmware version. One of the first questions that we always have as installers is, when should VLANs be used on a network installation? Well, typically, for a larger network install, using VLANs would be highly recommended for segmenting the network traffic and to remove the likelihood of having any latency issues for those latency-sensitive devices. For example, when you have VoIP phones, because if they're not given the necessary priority, then your client may end up with crackling noises or static on the other end of the phone. Also, during audio and/or video streaming, you want to try and keep these devices from continuously buffering, which again may require having them configured for a different VLAN. Now, things that will not require any sort of networking priority are devices such as computers and printers. Therefore, if there's an installation and it's going to have a computer, a printer, and an IP camera, then VLANs will not be necessary, and having a flat single VLAN network will be just fine. So before we can begin configuring our SX user interface, we first need to log in using the default information. Default IP address is 192.168.1.205. And the default login information is package and package S. And when you first log in, these are the menu options that you can view immediately from the dashboard. Now we're going to navigate to VLAN and configuration. And you'll notice that the SX series user interface provides multiple options to configure VLANs as well as the ports on the network. We have preset zone templates, package zones wizard, and then the manual setup. So if we first take a look at our package zone templates, you can click on the start button, and our preset zone template configurations are just options to choose from if there is a job install that matches any of these existing templates that you might be able to apply. All you need to do is click on the template to use, and then click on the Apply Template, click on OK, and all ports will immediately be configured in less than 30 seconds. Now if you scroll up, you can see all of the port configurations that have been applied based on the template selection. Now if we navigate back by selecting the Package Zones tab, we can now select the second option available, which is your Package Zones wizard. Within this option, you're able to select the necessary zones to add to the network, as well as the ports to be configured per zone on this switch. Now, my network setup, the following are the ports and how I need them to be configured for my network. Port 1 is my uplink port from my router. Port 24 is going to be my access point that will have multiple SSIDs tagged with different VLANs, including VLAN 6 for my guest network SSID. Ports 3 through 5 will need to be configured for VLAN 2, since that is where my IP cameras will be connected. And ports 7 through 10 will need to be configured for VLAN 3, since this is going to be my control system. Now let's walk through configuring my network based on the specifications provided. If we first click on the Start button for your Package Zones wizard, the first step is going to be selecting the VLANs that are supposed to be a part of the network. And based on our configuration overview, we want to select zones 1, 2, 3, and 6. We're going to click on the Next button, and now we're going to configure the ports based on our needs. So ports 3, 4, and 5, I can either make my selections per port, and I can drag and drop it to the necessary VLAN, or I can group them together, and then I can drag and drop down to the other VLAN. So you'll notice that I've configured ports 3, 4, and 5 for VLAN 2, and 7 through 10 for VLAN 3. Everything else I want to keep on VLAN 1. Please keep in mind that the only devices that are able to be configured across multiple VLANs but still communicate to one another are those that send out unicast and/or multicast messaging. If a device is communicating using broadcast messaging, then it will not have the capability of communicating across VLANs. If this happens, please be sure to have your hardwired computer or wireless device connected on the same VLAN as that device in order to properly communicate to it. Now, once I've clicked on the Next button after making the necessary selections for my ports, then I will be able to view my zone link, otherwise known as my uplink ports. These ports are generally known as your hybrid ports. The only devices that will be configured as hybrid ports are those that have an interface capable of configuring VLANs, which are primarily routers, switches, and access points. All other end-user devices, such as printers, computers, control systems, home automation devices, they will be configured as access ports. An access port has only a single VLAN configured on the port. The reason is because these devices are not capable of configuring VLANs on their user interfaces. Therefore, they do not need to have any VLANs tagged, but only to be configured for the VLAN which the device will be set. This VLAN is called their default VLAN. Something to keep in mind when configuring your end-user devices to be set on a specific VLAN: you also need to make sure that their gateway is configured for the VLAN gateway. For example, for my ports being configured on VLAN 2, I need to make sure I place a static gateway of 192.168.2.1 to match the VLAN 2 gateway configured on my router. For VLAN 3, I need to place a static gateway of 192.168.3.1 to match the VLAN 3 gateway on my router. Now, if this information is configured incorrectly on the end-user device, the devices will no longer be able to communicate across VLANs as they should be. Also, if the default VLAN is not properly configured on the port, then the device will not be detected on the network as well. So now that we've finished configuring our VLAN ports as well as our zone link ports, we can click on the Next button. We're going to confirm the selections made, and then click on the Confirm button and OK. To give us an idea of what our configuration now looks like, we are able to immediately view our VLAN port configuration by looking at the ports shown at the top of the page. Based on the below information, you're able to view which ports are set up as access ports and which ports have been configured as hybrid ports. Now, the last option available to configure your ports and add VLANs on your SX switch is through manual setup. If you wanted to add additional VLANs to your switch, you can click on the Add button, type in the VLAN ID number, type in the name for that VLAN, and select the Apply button. This will immediately apply that VLAN to this switch. Now, if we wanted to configure ports 11 through 14 for VLAN 5, we can scroll down to Port Assignments, and right below the Access column, we're going to select to the right of VLAN ID 5. Now we are going to select ports 11 through 14, and you will immediately notice that it populates next to VLAN ID 5, and we're going to click on Apply. We have now successfully configured ports 11 through 14 for VLAN 5. Now, to make sure that the router and the access point can communicate the VLAN 5 traffic, we are now going to add VLAN 5 to our hybrid ports. If I click on this little pencil to the right-hand side of my hybrid columns, it allows me to edit the boxes. I'm going to click under the T column, and I'm going to select the VLAN 5, which is currently not highlighted based on my selections. If I click on it, you will now see it add to the tagged column. If I click on the Apply button, it will now immediately apply that VLAN ID to allow the traffic to pass through ports 1 and 24. You will also notice with your hybrid ports, they are the ports that have this dotted line around it, which means those are the ports that have a default VLAN based on this circle provided, and the additional VLANs that are accessible on the switch are also being tagged. Now, if for any reason you wanted to default your SX series switch, you can easily do so by doing the following. Select the Package Zones tab. Click on the Start button below Package Zone Templates. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you will have a template named All Management, and in parentheses it says Default. If you click on Apply Template, it will immediately apply this configuration, and now this switch can be utilized as a flat network if you are no longer using VLANs. Thank you for joining us today for configuring your SX series switch user interface.